Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Stephen Mullowney, who's the CEO and director of TRX Gold, who are a Canadian listed miner who are rapidly advancing their flagship Buckreef project in Tanzania, Africa. Stephen has over 20 years experience in corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions and investments, working for the likes of PwC and National Bank Financial. He's been the CEO since 2020, and he's going to share his journey, what TRX Gold have been up to and the challenges that they faced, including adopting new technologies, and also discuss how they're working with and helping the local communities and a lot more. Stephen, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me here today. I look forward to the discussion and talking about the rapid growth that we've had at our project.
Yes, certainly. As we always start these podcasts off, I just wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your career. Obviously, as I mentioned, you worked in corporate finance and worked for PwC, etc. So yeah, just wondered if you can just run us through your journey up to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. Obviously, I'm Canadian, live in Toronto, have a busy, active personal life as well as a corporate life. Where did I start in my career? I'm a chartered accountant by trade and originally, and then thereafter I went to work with Manulife Financial in the private placements division. So I was an investment professional, and from there went to National Bank Financial, in which I did a lot of corporate finance transactions and M&A. Following that, I went to PwC, started off in diversified industries, and then went into mining, and in that role I led the deals mining practice, so did a lot of M&A, a lot of fairness opinions, a lot of restructurings, a lot of government relations and negotiating of agreements. One of my clients was TRX Gold, when they were looking to bring on a person to turn it around and to implement the project. That's when I got involved approximately about 4 years ago.
Okay. Before we speak about TRX Gold, as the CEO, how is your leadership style shaped a TRX Gold direction and obviously culture? And what personal experience or values have influenced the way you lead the company through obviously certain pivotal moments, as we're going to discuss later?
Yeah, so my leadership style is one of consensus building and consensus decision making. So I like to have individuals that have an opinion and that will want to add an opinion and come forward, and then we'll make consensus decisions predominantly. Now, if there's a difference in opinions, and I'll take that all into consideration and make the decision myself. But predominantly, I prefer to have a consensus decision making framework amongst the management team. I'm also like to, drive a very high performance culture. Obviously, coming from the corporate finance and Big Four background, high performance is something that is, top of mind. So, I'm really out in front of people. I'm really driving them, really trying to motivate them to move things forward and to make sure things don't slip. So also in that background is attention to detail, and in mining, attention to detail is very important. Ultimately, your geological database is a database. It's numerically based, and a lot of assumptions go into that. So you really have to really know it and be really detail oriented. If you miss, and you're always going to miss with regards to in mining, rock is on metal. So you're going to have downtimes and things of that nature. You're going to have bottlenecks. So you have to have a lot of attention to detail. You're always going to have some downtime and miss 100% production. So you need to bring that back and have your availability factor as high as possible. So you need to have a lot of attention to detail around maintenance and all those sort of things as well. So attention to detail is priority.
I would like to welcome our sponsor, Hawcroft. Founded in 1992, they provide property risk management services to the mining and other industries, using their knowledge, perception and expertise to offer true foresight across all aspects of mining and infrastructure. Their insurance risks surveys are recognised as the industry standard, as their reports are comprehensive, ensuring underwriters are well informed of risks surrounding your operation and quality control of those risks. Working with some of the biggest mining companies in our industry and across 600 sites. Hawcroft offer insurance risk surveys, construction risk reviews, asset critical and speciality assessments for a variety of mining, processing, smelting, materials handling, power, refining, port and rail operations. So if you're looking for a premium bespoke property risk management and risk engineering service, then contact Hawcroft today or visit their website at www.hawcroft.com. All details are enclosed in the show notes accompanying this episode. Just wondering if you can give us a snapshot of TRX Gold as a company.
So TRX Gold, we're listed in Toronto on the TSX as well as on the New York Stock Exchange American in New York. Most of the trading happens in New York. We're around 100 million market cap company today. At the Buckreef Gold Project has 2 million ounces in the measured and indicated category at 1.8 grams a ton. It's an open pit operation. It currently has a 2,000 ton per day plant on site that is producing gold. And our goal is to continually expand the resource profile through exploration. We've had some really good, exploration success, which we need to drill out a lot further. And we've been able to execute the project on a very capital constrained basis to get it into the production profile that it has, and we'll continually upgrade that production profile from internally generated cash flow.
What are some of the unique challenges that you faced at Buckreef Gold, and how has the team sort of overcome them? And I suppose anyone that's listening may come across similar experiences. So I just wondering if you can just tell us some of the challenges that you faced, and I suppose what lessons that you've learned within the mining operation and what you've been doing.
Yeah, so when I joined, the company was losing money. It didn't have a lot of treasury. Its relationship with the government needed improvement. So in coming in, we originally raised capital as well as repaired that government relationship and also put in place the rapid growth. So I had to come in and do a restructure. I hired people and put in place a business plan on a capital constrained basis that made sense. So what we did is we built this I think we raised net around $25 million over 3 years ago. And in that, we put that plant into production as well as the bringing in place the management team to get it to where it is today. So that is a very cheap basis for mining companies. And so we've been operating under a capital constrained basis in order to do that, as well as do some of the exploration that we've done. So you got to be very nimble. You got to have very good attention to detail on things, and you got to be able to utilize the local people and the local contractors and in order to help get this off the ground to a sustainable basis, which we've done. So that has been a major challenge. Capital markets have been a challenge over that period of time too. We talk about record highs in capital markets in the press, but the small micro cap and small cap space has been really hit hard, and that's where we are. So the share price hasn't performed, although we've done a lot of good things during that period of time. So, balancing those sort of things and making sure you have focus on the right areas is always something that is, critical as well.
Yeah. Do you feel there's anything you could have done differently? And if so, what kind of things could you have done differently with the challenges that you had faced?
Yeah, what we've done differently, certainly, there are some things that you would obviously do differently over time. I think I would have maybe raised a little bit more capital to be able to do a little bit more exploration. I would have liked that because I think there's a lot of value levers on that, and it could have improved the mine plan. Well, we'll get there over time to do that. That's the gold that you can find, or the gold that's in the ground doesn't go anywhere, right? So you got to bring it out. So it's just a matter of timing around that. I think, when you're looking at aspects around human resources and things like that, you may make some changes sooner than later and things of that nature from a CEO perspective. And I think, envisioning it to be a much larger project and moving up some time frames around that would be good. But again, you're balancing that in a capital constrained environment. So those are some of the sort of things that, when I reflect on it, that maybe we could do a little bit better. Ultimately, you're balancing a lot of, juggling a lot of balls to make sure that, a lot of shareholders don't want more capital to be issued. So.
Yep. Yeah. I totally understand.
Yeah. It's like running your household budget, right? Everybody would like to take 5 vacations a year, but they can't.
Yeah, certainly. Buckreef has shown obviously significant growth in production. Could you sort of dive into the technical aspects that have obviously contributed to the success of that? And what innovations or approaches do you feel has been critical in obviously what you've done to make the growth in production as what it is today?
So I'll give a lot of credit to the team on the ground in Tanzania. We're 100% local people operating the asset. And in order to get it into production, obviously there's a lot of technical aspects that got to come together and you got to build it out. And so the team on the ground, as well as putting some international consultants on top of them to help guide them, has been able to basically build the asset from scratch with a lot of local resources. We utilize shipbuilders, for instance, to build tanks. We utilize local engineers for putting in place the electrical works, etc. And so the team on the ground has done a great job of doing that and staying out ahead of the bottlenecks such as tailings facilities and those sort of things. So one of the good things about being in Tanzania is the infrastructure is in place. We have road to site, power lines there. The road is paved except for the last 10 kilometers. There's local contractors, so we have a local mining contractor that's done the mining and made the investment for us in order to do that. We also have very good, what I'll call HR aspects, because of the other mines, like Barrick is pretty close, AngloGold Ashanti is close, Shanta is fairly close. So there's a lot of human capital aspects there that enable us to do this very quickly. And the local authorities have been very supportive on permitting and those sort of things as well, in keeping international standards top of mind in order to get this all done and get the permits in place to be able to expand it very quickly.
Yeah. And how was the permitting process for you?
We're a special mining license, so we can go about putting together the plans for the project, but certainly around tailings facilities and other things, the permitting process has been very good and very efficient, and still upholding international standards. So our tailings facilities, for instance, are fully lined, so that reduces the risk significantly from tailings failures and things like that. I would say, things around critical areas where failures can happen are overbuilt.
Yeah, good to hear. If we're looking at obviously Tanzania as a country now, what are some of the benefits and challenges you faced in operating in Tanzania, maybe compared to other jurisdictions within Africa? And how does TRX manage geopolitical and economic risks, obviously within the region?
Yeah, I'm going to separate that between operations and then what we'll call politics because they're different. So on the operations side, I would say your local infrastructure is in place, as I mentioned. So roads, power, and very importantly, human capital. Like all the universities have programs now for metallurgists, mining engineers, and geologists. So that's very important. So I would say getting the permits through has been good. Being able to build, having the local expertise there to be able to build this very quickly, perfect. So I would say, from that regard, Tanzania is very easy to operate in, and it is a lower cost jurisdiction as well. So we have low costs as well. Part of that is the grade profile that we have. On the political side of things, look, obviously, politicians get elected. They need to have the community support. So there's always going to be an element of nationalism in any country in Africa or even in Canada, the United States that we're seeing today, and even in your country, the UK. So, you have to manage that. But what I would say is Tanzania has been very, very open to investment. There's been significant M&A and investment into the mining sector. They want it to be 10% of their GDP or greater. It's a big foreign currency contributor to the country. So you have to manage the politics as well as the economic growth. And I think Tanzania has done a good job of balancing those. And that's what I like to see. I don't want to see a complete just bring in your money and take as much out as possible approach, because that's not going to work politically. The local communities have to benefit, and they have to be the number one priority from a jobs perspective and a growth perspective of the mining assets that are in these countries. And royalties and taxes are important to be paid. They need to be competitive worldwide, obviously, and they do contribute to the development of the country and social services.
Yeah. What would you say with other African countries, not necessarily just West Africa, could be any other countries within Africa? What would you say that they could learn from that Tanzania is doing well from your perspective?
Look, I think the permitting process is good. I think a lot of countries get that right. I think the rhetoric around foreign investment and bringing in and getting those sort of things correct is important. And limiting disputes and working with each other is very important. And I think the balance between that and the fact that the resources on the ground needs to be in place. And we look at what's going on in West Africa. It's probably, they always say the pendulum swings too far each way. I would suspect in West Africa right now, the pendulum's swung too far in the wrong direction. Let's remember Tanzania during the Acacia period probably was accused of the same thing. So when you get through those sort of challenges as countries, and I've been involved in this in my roles at PwC, and you come out to the other side, you typically get it right on the pendulum towards the middle, which is where I think Tanzania is at this point in time. I don't see them moving from there either. That started to move towards the middle when I joined, and we're now firmly, I think, in the middle ground, which is the proper spot to be, which is gives you a good geopolitical risk. You manage it. You're respectful, open, and your relationships are good. And I think that's where we are.
Obviously, mining projects often have a profound impact on obviously local communities. How does TRX collaborate with obviously local and national authorities to obviously ensure effective permitting and compliance? And obviously, you've covered some of that. But also, how does the company engage with local stakeholders to foster better and positive relationships and address any concerns that they may have? And also, is there any particular special initiatives that you and the company are proud of?
Yeah, so look, the local management handles those sort of local relationships, and that's where it should lie, is in local people dealing with local people. And in that regard, they work with the local community leaders in building out the mines. There's certain aspects of employment that they will go to the local community leaders for. And there's a process in place for that. Like I said, the local communities have to be the biggest beneficiaries. That's how you get your social license. People like their jobs. They like earning income. They like having a good livelihood. They also like to have their kids going to decent schools and having healthcare facilities. So with regards to that, we're 100% Tanzanian on the ground. A significant portion of the workforce is from the local community. So the way I like to look at it is you have different skill sets. And as you want to bring those skill sets as close to the mine site as possible, it's easier to have them working and living in local communities than it is to housing people. But not everybody's going to be an engineer. Not everybody's going to be a geologist. And so then you got to look at the national aspect of that in order to, build that out. And that's our philosophy. We work with the local districts and putting in place CSR programs around schools and healthcare facilities. That's really where the focus is right now, and employment initiatives. And it's worked out very well. So we did go through, when I first arrived in the first couple of years, a land compensation process. That worked out very well as well. And so, I think really it's simple things, really. Like, to be honest, like people you like to have a job, I like to have a job, and we like to focus on our families. Tanzanians are no different.
Obviously, technology is increasing, shaping the mining industry and obviously other industries around the world. I wonder if you could just share what TRX have incorporated the new technologies to maybe improve efficiency, safety, or sustainability in its operation.
Yeah, so luckily for us, the technical aspects are pretty simple. Crush, grind, CIL. That's great, because that takes out the sort of chemistry risk of the asset, and we've proven that out. And we know how to get the recovery rates up much higher. What I would say where the focus is on technology is, look, it's very good now, drone surveying, for instance, around your pits, where you're going to drill and blast, those sort of things, monitoring of drilling and blasting. All the computer sort of technologies in that, mine planning, scenario analysis, debottlenecking, all of that now it can be driven by technology and what you do on your screen. So that's where our technological focus is. We're in Tanzania, so we're not operating the big electric haul trucks like others. Part of that is the smaller haul trucks are good, and for the asset where it is today, and it creates quite a bit of local employment as well. So that's important to keep in mind. So balancing technology and local employment too is that you can bring in all the technology you want, but you get rid of a lot of local employment. So you got to balance that as well.
Yeah. If we look at the gold market, how do you see gold or the gold market globally evolving? And I suppose where does TRX fit into that sort of landscape?
Yeah, so with regards to, if we're talking about the gold price, I think the first aspect of that is the gold price has performed fairly well. Hasn't performed like crypto has, though, right? So let's keep that in mind for a second as I get into this. So, look, the geopolitical risk of the world is high. I don't see that cooling down. I don't see it cooling down as, President-elect Trump comes in. I think it may increase for a period of time. We also see governments unwilling to cut back on spending. So I still think deficits are going to be going forward, which means inflation, because deficits are printing of money. And so I don't see that changing. So I think gold prices are going to continue to perform in an upward direction and continue to move higher. One thing about gold is that if you look at the run on crypto, I would say if crypto can run like that, why can't gold run at some point in time like that? Now, crypto is not as mature of a market as gold is. It is more speculative of a market. Gold has future contracts and all that sort of stuff. But gold is exchangeable. I am seeing in the gold market a lot of Eastern players looking to get access to gold. I think that's being driven by geopolitics. The geopolitics are also still aligned towards, there's still a significant portion of the world is anti-US dollar or want to get another form of exchange. So I think gold may have a part to play in that at some point in time. So I think over time, gold is going to perform very, very well. It has been around a long time. It's a very mature market. So it's speculative, but not as speculative as crypto at this point in time. But I think over time, people will rediscover that, gold has its place, and it will perform. And how are we a beneficiary of that? Well, we sell gold. So
Yeah.
And we mine gold. So that's obviously, the beneficiary part of that. So.
Yeah. And I suppose following on from that, obviously gold has made a significant increase, I think 30% in 2024 roundabout, but it hasn't reflected in the share price of general mining companies. There seems to be that disconnect. I just wondered if you could comment around that and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, look, if you look at the market, it's all towards technology stocks like Nvidia and chip makers and things of that nature, and what we'll say the big 7 or 8 companies, and that's what's really driven the markets. I think, look, I have a philosophy that you have to create a decent business, no matter what your commodity is and you're selling or what business product you're selling. So you need to create profit, EBITDA, and cash flow in order to attract investors. I don't think miners are any different in that regard. We will create more profit and income with a higher gold price over time. So we should get a higher multiple. But you do need an industry that needs to perform in order to attract investment. I'm not sure it's been the best performing sector. Certainly not from a stock price perspective, but just in general from an operating perspective. And so collectively as an industry, we need to get better at that to attract the investors into the industry and manage the risk profile. So I think that's where a large part of the disconnect is. A lot of the sector too is small. So we're a small company, 100 million market cap company. So we have challenges as a penny stock getting investors into the stock, and we have to overcome those sort of things. We got to get out there as a company and as an industry and say we're a very profitable industry, and we got to give back to our shareholders.
Yeah, just following on from what you've just said, and you refer to the crypto market. It seems when the crypto market, i.e., Bitcoin, rises, all the others rise as well. However, if you look at the mining industry, gold rises and other commodities just do their own thing. If you look at lithium, that tanked. Obviously, copper has been pretty stable. So it's completely different. I suppose if investors look at the mining industry as a whole, as opposed to each commodity, although obviously a lot of people that know the industry will know what commodities to focus on. So again, I wondered if you could perhaps comment on that.
Yeah, so I look when I was in my PwC roles, I focused on all commodity and same with the other banking roles. So there's a cost curve profile to all these industries, and there's always going to be, even in gold, an element of supply and demand. And so as the gold price rises, and part of the gold price rise is the cost profile of miners have risen as well. So you don't try to operate when you're making a loss. So in the what I like to say is the floor price of where it can get to, or the 80th percentile roughly of the cash cost curve, is higher now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. So that's part of your underpinning going forward and how you would forecast out. That's no different in any commodity industry. So if you look at lithium, and you made that example, is the lowest cost assets are expandable. So every time those lowest cost assets get expanded, the price comes off. But in order for those lower cost producers to make profit, they need higher cost producers at the end of the cash cost curve to maintain a certain price. But they have to balance that with their own market share. So it's a very interesting market. And then as demand comes off, we're seeing a shift a little bit away from the electric vehicles aren't accelerating as quickly as people thought it might, and the demand has come off a little bit. So that's impacted, say, the lithium market. Copper goes through the same sort of aspects of it, although a much, much larger market and mature of a market. So all these commodities, demand keeps on rising ultimately over time, but more assets keep on coming online, and the cash cost profile of those assets impact the market.
Yeah. Lastly,
I've done a lot of research on this, so.
And lastly, with obviously 2024 marking obviously a record year for yourselves, what are TRX Gold's key priorities and growth strategies for this year?
Yeah, so this year, in the first couple of quarters, we're a single mine asset. We're going through a lower grade profile, so we have a focus on cost. So our cost per ton numbers are moving in the right direction, which is down. Which means the throughput is up from a tons perspective. So we're managing that. And then the second half will have a better grade profile, so we should have higher production numbers as a result of that. Then the focus is on getting the efficiencies in the plant, perhaps expanding that plant again from a throughput perspective. And then once the cash flow comes, is to increase the exploration program to really drill out what you and I had an off the record conversation on around football and zones. So looking at the Anfield zone and Stanford Bridge zone and drilling those things out to get a better mine plan. That's going to be the focus. Look, we do this out of cash flow from operations right now. In doing it that way, it is a little bit slower than if you were to go out and raise the capital and accelerate it. So it's a different business plan versus a lot of the other miners. So it's slow, and it's more of a slow and steady approach as opposed to bringing in a lot of capital and doing it very quickly.
Stephen, really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your journey, telling us about TRX Gold, some of the challenges that you faced, telling us about obviously working in Tanzania, and it seems a great jurisdiction to do business and mining in.
Yeah.
And obviously covering the commodities and the commodity life cycles. So really appreciate your time. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they have any questions they want to ask, and obviously follow the story, follow the company, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
You'll find us on LinkedIn, you'll find us on X or Twitter, and our website at www.trxgold.com. We'll put you in touch with investor relations, and please reach out through that channel.
Yeah, certainly. We'll include those in the show notes to accompany this episode as well for easy access. So, Stephen, all the best for 2025. Perhaps you might want to come on the podcast either later this year, or next year, and give us an update.
Yeah, we'll give you an update, and more than happy to just talk about the markets in general. My original background and degree in university is economics, but I've never done economics to the full extent. But I do like talking about it, following it.
Yeah, it'd be good to obviously discuss economics from your perspective, from obviously all the research that you'll be doing. So yeah, why don't we do that later this year?
Yeah, no, thank you, Rob.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, Appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. And as I always say, don't just share the episodes with people within our mining industry. Do share it with people that you know, friends, family, acquaintances, and people that are outside of the mining industry. The only way we're going to improve the image and branding of mining and make people that are not in our industry aware of our industry and what a brilliant industry it is, we can only do that by your help and by sharing this information to those outside of our industry. Thank you for listening. Until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.